reflect the opinion of the LaRue Press Network.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Paul White, and it's May 22nd, and you're watching Get Schooled on Education on the LaRue Press Network on Rumble, or possibly, if it's not live, on something else, or it could be live on there. Does it come through live on them, Jen?
Yeah, on YouTube and also on Facebook.
Well, we're just all over the place here.
Yes, we are.
This is Jan Hermson, our studio engineer, with me. Get Schooled, the full transparent truth. What's wrong with our schools? Who's responsible? How do you solve it? And why isn't it being done? Just a variety. We've got something different for you today. We're going to be looking at, parents, of course, if schools are like a triangle with students being one part of it, one point, and the schools being the other part, and teachers rather, then the third one would be parents. And so today what we're talking about, I've got a soon-to-be published book called Quit Blaming Your Kids. It's Your Fault. And it's for parents, obviously. And what it does is it just takes a lot of topics that come up between parents and kids, very similar, almost identical to the ones that come up with kids and teachers. And the book looks at a pretty straightforward way to work out these questions. And so Jan's a mother, and I'm a longtime teacher, and some would say I'm a mother too, but we're going to give you some good answers today, some good dialogue about this. We would really encourage you to call in and text any questions or comments you have about what we say. Text number is 775-399-2888. 775-399-2888. So without dallying any longer, we might have a third party joining us here in the near future.
She is here.
Oh, excellent.
We have Christina Schwanke. Let me just get her added in here. And
hello. Sorry.
There you are.
Sorry I'm late. I was so ready at 9 a.m. this morning here in Florida, and then backwards.
Things happen,
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you joined us, Christina. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
I understand you've got one daughter. How old is she?
My daughter's about to turn 9.
Oh, boy, that's perfect. And Jan, you had how many children?
I had 2.
2 children,
Yep.
Okay.
And they're old.
Okay, well, that's good, too. You got a good
but I still school them every now and then.
Good perspective. Well, what I'd like to do, ladies, if we could, would be we're going to start. Christina, you should have it there somewhere, the acronym that's in the book for being a strong, assertive parent. Did that come through to you?
It did. Let me pull it up.
Okie doke. And what we'll do is, if that works with you guys, I'll start with them on what the book's position was, and then would love to hear your feedback. And I can tell you how this kind of worked for me teaching for a long time, and you can say, how's that working with you? How did it work? How is it working with you as a parent? That sound like a deal?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, so we've got a little acronym, kind of like an acrostic poem almost, but so it's PARENT, each letter standing for something. And the P in the book, I said, put yourself in a position of authority, the parent. A parent should tell the children what to do and not vice versa. Now, obviously, if you wanted to serve them a cheese sandwich for lunch, and they go, I'd like peanut butter kind. You say, absolutely not. Today is Tuesday. It's cheese sandwich day. That's a little extreme. But the basic emphasis of the book is saying, my dad was a teacher, and before I became one, he said, son, they don't need another friend. They got plenty of those. A teacher's got a unique role. Well, so does a parent. And in today's world, I'd be interested to know, you guys, this will be coming up also. Can you be a friend, etc.? But anyhow, in a position of authority in the classroom, the kids I taught, there was always no question who was in charge, but there's also no question that their opinions were valued and listened to. And if it seemed like a better idea than I had, then we went with it. But either one of you, Jan, why don't you start it? What's your thought on that?
Well, I would say you absolutely need to be in a position of authority when you're dealing with your children. And a parent should tell their children what to do and not vice versa. I do agree with that because I think that they're new, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be guided, and that's our job, is to guide them. I think that the way it's phrased is strong.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that everybody would agree with that. So what do you think, Christina?
Yeah.
I mean, my husband and I definitely take the approach of raise your children in the way they should go, and they'll come back to it when they're older.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think that it's a balance, right? Like, I agree with the general premise. Like, I am in charge. I am the adult. I'm the authority. Like, I've been through everything that she's going through, and I'm the person that she relies on. And I think that kids need that. I think it brings security when they know that their parent is going to guide them in the best direction. I think that these parents that decide just to let their kids be free range end up with really insecure kids.
If I can cut just a sec, Christine,
Yeah.
Is there any way to get more trouble on that?
I don't know. That's what I was working on.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah,
Keep going.
Go ahead.
But I also do think that you have to, I see a lot of parents who become very authoritarian. This is what you're doing. This is what I want you to do. And they don't take any regard for who their child is or what they're going through or what their thoughts are. And so we try to make sure that, there's an open line of communication within our home. My daughter is old enough to tell us what she's feeling or what she's thinking or what's going on. And we try to work through that because we want her to be successful in being able to navigate what's driving her. And sometimes, I'm going to say, no, it doesn't matter how you feel. And sometimes we're going to take a look at it and say, hey, maybe this is a better way of doing things, and it's kind of it's a moving target. But I definitely don't want a situation in 4 or 5 years when my daughter's of high school age. I don't want her going to other children for their opinions or their thoughts or their advice. I'd much rather her come to me. And so do I think that I need to be the parent? Absolutely. Do I think I need to be in charge? Yes. Do I think that she needs to be able to have an open line of communication? Yes.
That sounds pretty good. I laugh about what you said. My dad had a real dry sense of humor as far as like opinions or what children might think. One of his kids, a 5th grader, came up to him one day in class and he said, well, Mr. Wright, I just don't feel like doing math today. And I asked my dad, what'd you say? And he says, well, the boy's name was Abbas. He said, well, Abbas, I appreciate you sharing that. And if we ever have a day in here where what we're going to do depends on how you feel, I'll take that into consideration. But I laugh. Well, no, that sounds good. Okay, the A in parent. Ask questions all the time. Check out your children's stories, their friends, their rooms, anytime you suspect something's not right. Don't ignore problems. They'll only get worse. Now, Jan, with your kids being grown and Christina, you having a girl and a young one, this one really comes up with parents of teenage boys, especially single moms, because it's a amazing and disturbing statistic how many parents are afraid of their kids when they get older and bigger and kind of off the hook. And so the idea of not holding back, especially, like you say, as they get into their teenage years when there's so many things at play, to be able to really question things and just have an honest back and forth. But either one of you, how has that come up? We'll start with you, Christina. How is that with feeling like you have pretty accurate feedback on what your daughter's doing and not doing?
Wow. I will say this conversation, my husband and I were just having this conversation last night. So, with Mika being 9, I'm very, very involved in her activities. I'm a homeschool mom, so she is with me most of the time. She's with me most of the time, and then she does gymnastics. Mika is a high-level gymnast, and she does gymnastics approximately 25 hours a week. And
pretty good.
Yeah, it's a part-time job there. And so she is always at the gym, and I'm there with her. I participate. I'm part of the booster club. I know her friends. I know the kids she interacts with. Her team ranges. She's the youngest, up to 15. So you can only imagine what comes in and out of her life when she's being around, up to 15-year-olds. We're very fortunate. Our older girls are very good and loving girls that give great, have great homes, etc. But it came up because we do have one girl in the gym that's a problem. Her parents don't ask questions. I know that, I don't know if you're still teaching, but as of now, all of these kids are being handed iPads and computers and going behind closed doors and telling their parents that they're doing homework. And, I had the mom say to me one day, well, I don't know if she's on TikTok. And this girl's 11 or 12. She's like, I don't know if she's on TikTok, but her Gmail address is tiktokqueen@gmail.com. Well, yes, your daughter is on TikTok. If that's her email address. But what's coming out of this girl is pure, it's scary. It's scary. And I told my husband last night, I said, I get the impression that her mother is afraid of her. She doesn't want to go in and find out what's going on. Some of her behaviors had come up in a conversation, and she's like, well, did you see it? Did you see my daughter do this? I'm like, yes, I did see your daughter do this. She's like, I think it's hearsay. No, you should probably ask questions because this is very serious stuff that's being brought to your attention. And if she's 12 now, what's this going to look like at 14 or 15?
Absolutely. And a lot of times when they're younger, I've found that the parents, and it's typically moms, worry about asking or pushing too much that the child say like, oh, I don't love you, or you don't whatever. And then when they're older, it's sometimes can be the fear of what the child would do to them. But yeah, it's just, there's just nothing like the truth. Well, Jan, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that, I've got great 2020, right? And I would say that the thing that hit me was, their friends, not so much their friends, but their rooms, right? What's in their rooms. And there's always that challenge of, there's the diary, do I look, right? Because girls tend to want to do diaries. And if there's something amiss, do you look or do you not? So
what'd you do?
I did not.
Yeah,
I asked questions. So I reverted to, and had I not, but I know moms that face that and that did look.
Yeah.
And it was important for them to do that. So I think it just really depends on your situation, but it is something you think about, and you look at it and you say, oh, do I go through all the drawers? Do I, you know what? And if there's a lot going on, and I knew what I would do if I had not gotten any decent answers, I would have looked and I would have gone through drawers and I would have done all those things because this is their life.
Oh, right? Yeah. The mistake. If we go down just a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a step in the, let's see, we're like Goldilocks looking for just right. There we go.
There we are,
there we
just
go.
right.
There was a, where was I? Well, we'll move on. We'll come back to it. Okay, the R in parent would be, and for those who are listening, we're going through like an acrostic of acronym for parent, how to be a strong, assertive parent. The P was put yourself in a position of authority. The A, ask questions all the time. The R is respect. Demand that you be treated respectfully at all times. Your children should never curse or yell at you. Boy, thinking back on how I grew up and how I taught, that last line kind of makes me think, gosh, is it out there? But oh boy, I've come across parents in the past who were just literally beaten and assaulted by their kids. Cursing was a normal part, especially if the dad's not around. And right now, with 60% of our children, that's the case. With kids who are considered, high risk, consistent trouble, it's about 90% of the dads are not in the home. So how do you do, Jan? How'd you do with your kids being respectful? I mean, would they ever tell you, "Oh, shut up," or anything like that, or worse?
I think I related this to you once before. There was one time when my 16-year-old had a little bit of a problem, and I ended up having to do what is totally unacceptable today. And she said something very obscene to me, and I smacked her across the mouth.
How'd it work?
She told me she was going to call the authorities, and I said, "Let me get a phone."
Yeah.
And so, of course, we, went back and forth. It wasn't all pretty, but, it worked out. It worked out. And she never called the authorities. I said, "Well, they'll probably take you."
Yeah, that's right. Well, Christina, how about you? At 9 years old, is your daughter thinking, maybe I'll try this out on mom? Or
No, but my mom gave me some advice, and it was basically nip things in the bud early. You don't let your toddler run over you. You don't let your 5-year-old run over you. You don't let them run over you when they're 8. Mika she was a very strong-willed child.
She
little ones, huh?
She's strong.
She's a strong-willed little person, which is a gift in many ways. But when there's 3, you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, what did I give birth to?" But I don't know if you're in Reno, but we actually, when she was 4, she joined Delchev Gymnastics. Joined Delchev and Ani. They are Bulgarian, and they're very tough. And I always joke that I spent a lot of money. People be like, "Oh, your child's very well behaved." I'm like, "I know, I spent a lot of money with the Bulgarians to get her that way." So, and it's just, but I would say, one of the reasons for homeschooling is that she doesn't have an opportunity to see other kids behave that way. She's not going to school every day seeing the disrespect that comes out. She did go to school for a short period, and I'd say that the schools today allow a lot of disrespect, even at young ages. And then we have found people, her gymnastics coaches, I will highlight the ones here and the ones there. They are all Bulgarian, and they support our ideology on raising children. That they'll be respected. They're tough. They don't let the kids get away with anything. There is no attitude if the attitude comes in the gym, it walks right out. They support us. And I think that's one of the things that's getting missed a lot in parenting right now is, you can say, well, you have to have your kids respect you, but then where are they at? Are you being supported in that ideology around you? Or are they going to school and learning they can treat you and to whatever adult is in their life, however they want?
Right. Now, kids, in my experience in the schools, you had to have respect, and I always gave it to them. Always treated them right. I said I just wouldn't dream of letting you treat me any differently, and so we wouldn't. And then, of course, a question that'll be coming up when we get into the book this time or another time is, what do you do when a child says no? Whether that child's your daughter's age or a 17-year-old, maybe half again your size and being pretty belligerent, what exactly do you do? So that gets pretty interesting. But yeah, respect to me is not negotiable. The E in parents would be expectations. Set them high, my book says. Every child should go to school 5 days a week. Out here, Christina, our attendance in our school district the absence rate averages 30 to 60%. This was unheard of. Help out at home. A child should be a shareholder, not a guest. Have a part-time job. Typically, in the schools that I've had control over, typically the time at which they had to start working, not like 20 hours a week at McDonald's, but doing some kind of job for some kind of compensation was no later than 11. Follow the law and not be using drugs or alcohol. And of course, I found that drugs, except for a very small short period of time when I was in college. I've never been a part of my life, alcohol, neither one. And I would have found there was no alcohol in our house when I was growing up. And I've always told kids, if I'd come home, say you smoking marijuana, and my dad had met me at the porch saying, "You're not going to use that doggone drugs," and met me at the door holding a bottle of beer in his hand while he was telling me that, I said, I don't know about most teenagers, but the hypocrisy of that would have struck me as, well, your drug's okay, mine's not. And adults like to make the argument, well, I'm an adult. As a kid, that one never carried much weight with me. But anyhow, this idea of expectations and jobs and, not using, etc. Jan, where'd you lay down the line with your kids?
Well, 11 was a little young. I wouldn't have pushed that age, but when they got to the point that they wanted cars or they even earlier when they wanted things, they would have to earn it. They had allowances, they had chores to do at home. So, so yeah, I think that I follow most of that and definitely set the expectations high, but also those expectations being what their expectations are by presenting them with opportunities, things that they could do in life.
Right.
Not telling them you have to be a fill in the blank. It was, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What are, do they do sports? Are they, big readers? Where do they fall in that?
Right.
One of my kids wanted to be an astronaut. She's not an astronaut, but she had that expectation at one time. So, I think that you just open the door for them.
Yeah, and I think showing them the joy of growing up, there's challenges to it, but there's also a lot of nice rewards. Feels pretty good to be kind of earning your own money and doing little things like that.
Absolutely.
How about you, Christina? What do you do with your daughter on the expectations?
Well, we have extremely high expectations in our home. And like Jan said, it's based off of who she is, not who we are. Mika's one of the top, I would say, 100 gymnasts her age in the United States.
She would be?
She is right now for her age.
Wow.
She's extremely hardworking. And a lot of that's just that when she looks at me and she tells me she wants something, she's like, I want to win a medal at state. I want to do this. I want to go to this level, whatever it may be. My husband looked back at her and say, you've got to work hard. What do you have to do to get there? We always ask her. She has to work hard. She has to take correction. She has to, be a good listener. She's got to be a good teammate. All of those things. And if she doesn't do those things, then she can't expect success. And we really push on that. Now, I do think, I see kids a lot where their parents have high expectations, but they don't align. And I think that's very demoralizing for a kid to be told that they need to be one thing or another when they don't have any passion for it or any skill at it or whatever it may be. And I always wonder what the end consequences of that is. So I think that there has to be some realistic expectations. We also have expectations about school. My kid does not love doing school. She does not love doing her work, but there is expectations. You got to get it done because there are things in life you're not going to enjoy and you still have to do it. So, and I think that your point's very valid about the work. I read a study and I don't have it at the top of my head, but basically the idea was that one of the reasons that we're having such a problem with the workforce right now is because the upcoming generation of workers didn't actually get high school jobs. They didn't work for anything.
About 80%.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, horrible.
So by the time, they went to high-end summer camps, they were in, school daycares through the summer, whatever they may have been doing. And then they go to college. And then by the time they graduate from college, they're 24. So these people are baked, they're done. And they never learned the ability to take the feedback, take the critique. I had a Hungarian boss when I was a kid, and she'd be like, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, and you're running around. So I think it's interesting that that's where our society is has headed, and it's so detrimental to our children.
Oh yeah, I mean, why every school district on earth would not have the requirement of like, well, mine was my kids had to work a minimum of 12 hours a week and start a savings account. So I mean, right away sets up being responsible, learning how to interact with the public, learning how to manage your money. It leads to all kinds of great things. Now your daughter's 9, I assume, what, 4th grade?
She's just finishing up the 3rd grade.
3rd, okay, good. Well, you'd like this. I taught 3rd and 4th, and I had a little girl in it, one of the best students I ever had. She was a gymnast, excellent. And so one day, and I didn't realize how good they could be and how strong they could be at that age. So I offered my class to buy free pizza for the whole class if any of them could beat me in how many pull-ups they could do.
Oh no.
Yeah, big mistake. So we went outside, and it was her name was Karen Haley, and a shout out to Karen if you're out there, dear. My humiliation still remains fresh in my mind. So I went first, and I was pretty proud of myself. I don't know, maybe I did 7 or 8. And Karen jumped up there and knocked out. At 17, she stopped and hung on the bar and said, and she was so sweet and respectful. She said, "Mr. White, should I stop now or do more?" I said, "No, I'm sufficiently embarrassed. I need to go order the pizza." But it was just incredible how strong they can get.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, it cracks me up that you say that, because my husband builds power lines, so he works with a lot of very strong, burly men. And my daughter learned how to do press handstands about 6 months ago. So, if you don't know what a press handstand is, they put their hands between their legs in a straddle position. They push to handstand. And she's very, very strong. So I sent the video to my husband, and he tried to do it, and he couldn't get off his butt. And then all the other guys couldn't do it either. And they were like, same thing. They were like, we are all so embarrassed.
That's great. Well, tell her to keep it up. Okay, so we're on the N in the parent acronym, negotiate. And the book's advice is negotiate nothing. You're the parent. It's your home. As long as your children live there, they follow your rules. And again, pretty firm lay down. I've found firmness, no room for wiggling, works pretty well with teens. Younger ones, maybe explain a little bit that, kind of I'm in charge here. But how are you, Jen? Did they, would you bargain? Would you go into negotiations with them, or
no? Just no. And I think that your caveat that when they're a little younger, sometimes you'll bend a little bit and have a little discussion. When we were off air, I had said to him, "Oh, negotiate. I'm going to talk to you about that." But that was kind of where I was. When they're younger, I think that they need some explanation. They need to understand why you can't negotiate with them, so that you don't just get that animal response, right? The kicking feet and all the rest of it.
Right.
I had my younger, when she was 3, I had just divorced, and we had moved into a new place. And every time we'd come home, she'd lay on the floor and scream. That was all she did, was scream. And I knew, she's unhappy. I was unhappy too.
Yeah.
We were together on that.
That's right.
But she just would listen to nothing. And the thing that finally turned her around was when I lay down on the floor and I screamed with her.
Oh.
And she couldn't, I think she was just shocked, right? Serious mom screaming at the top of her lungs.
How'd it work?
It worked eventually. I mean, not immediate, but it did work. She kind of figured it out that, that's the kind of attention I'm going to get. Yeah, it didn't work. So that was my experience.
How about you, Christina? Do you, what kind, any kind of negotiating there? How do you do it?
I don't know if negotiating is the right term. I mean, there's definitely, my child responds to things getting taken away. You don't get your homework done, you don't go to gymnastics. You don't, if you're disrespectful, then I'm going to take this away. That's always how it's been. And I think you can negotiate on certain things, but it's not behavioral. It's more like, like if you get this homework book done, like, we can go to the beach. oh, you don't want to go to the beach, then we can go do this instead, or, whatever it may be.
Right.
But as far as behavior, there is not a negotiation.
Yeah. And again, my experience with kids of all ages has been they're comfortable when they know where the boundaries are. They like to have their area they can go, they can operate within. And it's comfortable to know that some things like giving them boundaries. Kids often look, boy, especially with drugs, kids so want a reason and premature involvement in sex. Kids so want a reason not to. And when adults don't give them a reason to, they got to kind of be that strong on their own. And when you're young and a lot of peer pressure, that can be tough. Okay. And the last one in parent, the T, talk to your children about everything. You must make time to be aware of what's going on in their lives, or you'll certainly deal with it later. I think the number is for the average minutes a day a parent talks directly to their child. It's way less than 15. Not even 15 direct minutes a day. And then when you figure by the time, if they're in a public school, by the time they get to 12 out of 12th grade, they've been in the school 15 to 20,000 hours. So they've had the school's influence talking to them 15, 20,000 hours, and the parents often barely 2 or 3 minutes it might be. It's really short a day. But how would you all do it? Start with you, Christina. Do you set it? I mean, you're there with her all the time, so it's kind of a different situation. But do you ever set aside? What would you say to parents? Would you set aside a certain amount of time to just kind of catch up, or would you do it informally? Or, I've heard the saying, there's more good counseling been done doing dishes than there ever was sitting on a sofa. And but where are you on that?
Well, the first thing is, I think that Mika and I have our most in-depth conversations in the car. We're driving to and fro, and we talk, and I'm not the parent that accepts short answers. My mom wasn't either. So I think I take after her. But the kid gets in the car, how was your night? Fine. Fine is not an answer.
Right.
I want to tell me about your night. And we go through all of it. Of course, not everything comes out. Some days things will come out 3 or 4 days later. But I think part of it, though, is that I believe that you have to honor your child in having conversations with them as well, not just about their lives, but about yours. And I'm not talking, nitty gritty details about your relationship or something like that. There's got to be respect. But, as Jan knows, we've had a very uphill battle. I got involved in politics a few years ago because of the COVID restrictions. We pulled our daughter from school because of, woke nonsense. And
Right.
Jan was one of the people that I actually worked with on election integrity, which is how we know each other. And so our life got very complicated because of those things. Because I was at county commission meetings, because I was homeschooling my child, because we were questioning the integrity of our elections. I was basically feeling like and labeled by our government as a domestic terrorist. And so it's funny looking back on it, but it was something, my daughter went with me to protest. She went with me when,
Real nice.
She was part of my life in that time. She understood why, we wouldn't take her to the grocery store when things were getting really bad with the masks. She understood why we were moving to Florida. We had all of those conversations with her. I recently purchased a book, and it's called Raising Woke Children, or Conservative Children in a Woke City. And they have a rule that's be the first source of information, address a problem first. And so, my 8-year-old we have talked about situations like transgenderism and what is going on in the stores. We've talked about the election integrity. We've talked about the COVID vaccines. We've talked about the masks. We've talked about all of it. So I think that when, you want something from your child, you want them to talk to them, you have to model that, and it has to be very real. Everything's been, as far as we could keep it age appropriate. Some things became unage appropriate just because of the circumstances. But I don't think any kid really needed to know what the COVID vaccines were causing, but it became very detrimental very fast. And so I think as a parent, that's been kind of our rule of thumb, is we're going to explain to you what's going on in our life, but in that we want the same respect from you.
No, that sounds real good. Jan, how about you?
Well, I would say the times were different in some ways. And then I was also a single mom, as I said. So the talking to them really took place at dinner time, if it was going to happen. I was fortunate, set myself up in a situation where I lived with family members. So it was my brother and his wife. And so she was the stay-at-home mom. I was working, he was working. So it was a little bit different, but I would say, yeah, we did talk about everything. And again, because of that additional family being with me, it gave me a lot of feedback that I didn't even have to get directly from them.
Well,
I could get it
from other family
the
members.
other family members. So, but we were a big family, and so it was good.
Well, I always think when people say, they won't talk with their children about anything with politics or anything like that because they're just kids. The teaching comparison I see to that is you would never teach them to read until they were ready to read, like War and Peace. You would never teach them appropriate good books coming up steady by steady. And it's the same thing. Here's an example. I was a superintendent and a teacher at a charter school, a real good one in San Luis Obispo some years ago. And I taught social studies, 3rd through 5th grade, I guess. And so one day I had a mom come in after school, and very, very conservative, both politically and in her Christianity. And she came in real angry, and she said, "Mr. White, my daughters," I had her daughters, a 3rd and 5th grader, "my daughters told me that today in social studies you were talking about homosexuality and abortion." And she was just incensed. And I said, "Well, that's correct." I said, "Would you like to know what I told them?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, first of all, the context is it was an election year. We were studying the newspapers, and the platform of the two parties and the words abortion and homosexuality were on both of them. And the kids weren't clear about what either one was. And I said, well, so with abortion, I said, I told them, well, you know how their mothers were mostly childbearing age. I said, well, you know how your mom will get pregnant sometimes where she's going to have a baby. Yeah. I said, well, there is an operation sometimes people can have, and if they don't want to have that baby, and it's called an abortion. And I said, some people say, well, it's the mother who's going to have the baby. It should be her choice. And other people say, well, no, that's a baby. That's not the mother's choice. She needs to have the baby. And I stopped there and I said with the kids, and I said, and you'll want to go home and talk about this with your parents. And you'll want to learn about it as you go on in life and see how you feel about this and where you are. I said, people have very strongly diverging opinions on this. Then with homosexuality, again, very similar. I said, well, you know how usually boys like girls and girls like boys? I said, well, sometimes girls decide they'd like to be with another girl or a boy with another boy. And of course, being elementary age kids, they all go, ew, And I said, well, doesn't happen very often. But I said, some people say, well, it ought to be up to them who they choose to want to have for a boyfriend or girlfriend. And other people say, no, that's not right. Boys and girls, boys should be with girls, girls should be with boys. And it's not how any other way isn't how it should be. And I stopped there and I said, and you'll want to go talk with your parents about this and see what they think and see what you think as you get older and learn. And I said, so that you'll have an educated feeling about how you feel about it. And I turned to the mother, and she'd come in hot as anything. And I said, well, and she said, no complaints. And so I said, I've just found over the years, including when I was a child, if somebody whoever brought the questions up in class was purely innocent. And I said, I've found if you sit there and either give them a totally inappropriate, your opinion, adult perspective on either one of those at that age. Or if you just say, no, we don't ever talk about that. We can't talk about that at all. I said, I never found either one of those approaches to work very well. Like they say, when a child asks you what time it is, they really don't want to know how to make a watch. They've just heard something and it's kind of like, well, oh, okay, it's an under control thing and I can talk to mom and dad and we can go along. But how do you all feel about that? The idea of bringing up current event issues like those two. If I'd been your daughter's teacher, Christina, and she'd come home and you'd been the one talking to me and I'd given that explanation, how would you have been with that?
Jen, you brought me on the show because I'm very opinionated, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, man. Okay, so I mean, the times have changed, right? Like you said, there was very few people, and we'll just take the homosexuality piece to this conversation. There were very few people in the 90s that identified as homosexual. It was not an epidemic as we see today. Right now, 24% of kids in high schools, they identify as homosexual. And that is a huge number. And so as a parent, what you told those kids is the best case scenario of what we are seeing in schools right now.
Not in ours. Ours are promoting it as safe and normal.
That's what I mean. Is that
either one.
It's the best case scenario is that somebody's going to be neutral with your child on it, because the reality is that, when you go to school in Nevada, when you go to school in California, when you go to school in even Florida, probably less now, but we've been seeing them promote it. They're promoting that if you're sad, you must not be your actual sex. If that it's cool to be a homosexual, whatever. There's so many things going on, but our children, and I'll just be frank, are getting groomed in our schools. So as a parent, you did that mom a favor that she now needs to go home and talk to her child about the issues that are important to them as a conservative and as a Christian. And it's one of the things that I think we see a lot of with parents, especially in the Christian church, where they decide not to talk about those things because they think they're wildly inappropriate, or they don't want their kids saying something, or whatever it may be. And we've had to kind of just say, hey, we'll take the flack for it, but boys are boys and girls are girls, and boys are to marry girls and girls are to marry boys, and anything else is against God's design. And they're not going to hear that in the school. And if as a parent, you're not having that conversation with your kid early and often on an age appropriate level, your kid will be groomed to make poor life decisions when it comes to their sexuality. And maybe it's not homosexuality that they go for, but I can tell you, looking around, and even in some of the best case scenarios, I can tell you which girls are headed to promiscuity and homosexuality, and it's coming from the schools.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, well, I've got a big talk coming up into this week here, and homosexuality is a big part of what I bring in, because I said what's endangering the kids is they're not teaching the facts. I said, if that would come under facts, sex education, then the facts are that, the schools don't tell them. It's not genetic. It's not hereditary in any way. It's a choice. The facts are people who choose that lifestyle have significant higher examples, I guess, or experience in their life of suicide, substance abuse, depression. Life expectancy difference can be 5 to 20 years shorter. Suicide, did I say? They're not telling them. They're not telling them that because, of course, when they're teenagers, and along that, for instance, the homosexuality, they're not telling them that any kind of sexual activity, straight or gay, under a certain age, is a felony and can lead to them carrying a label of a sex offender around for the rest of their life. They're not telling them any of these things. And so that's my complaint, is that public schools at their best, in another book wrote Christina, and it talks about teaching the kids about everything, both sides of everything, good and bad, that mankind's ever done, indoctrinating them in nothing.
Yeah.
And so, and let them, and again, we talk about the family's not as strong. A school should constantly be pointing the kid back to the home and back to the parents.
Oh, but that's not happening.
Oh, it's
here
not going
at all.
on at all. They're saying where you can't tell the
No.
parents if their child's this or that. So, yeah, it was, you know, and with an older one, with teenagers and stuff, you know, you can give them a little more in different ways. But it's really, they've gotten away from just wanting to be the facts. The public schools simply have gotten to where they want to sell whatever side they believe. And of course, the side they believe right now is extreme left, and we're suffering proportionately.
Well, and I, you know, for anybody listening, and obviously you know this, is don't be deceived. This stuff happens early and it happens often in the schools.
Yep.
They are pushing a Marxist agenda, and the Marxism is about getting the children on their side. And one of the reasons we pulled Mika, and there were several, was there was one day I packed her lunch. At the time I worked remote, and so I packed her lunch. I put baby carrots in a little Ziploc bag and I sent them to school with her. And the teacher sent her home to tell me that I needed to start packing her lunch differently, that I was no longer to use Ziploc bags. And, you know, I'm sitting there with my 5-year-old, and of course I'm frustrated, and I probably didn't handle it correctly, but I said, well, you tell your teacher when she comes and does my dishes, she can decide how I pack your lunch. And, and my daughter starts crying, and she's like, you're mad at me, aren't you? You're mad at me. And it was one of those moments where I could see that they had driven a wedge between me and my daughter on the altar of their climate change doctrine. And they did it on purpose. And if you don't think that they're doing it on purpose, these teachers every year, and they also bring in nonprofits to talk to your kids. They go to trainings that teach them how to do this. And they may not be labeling it to these teachers as we're driving a wedge in children, but they teach them exactly what to say and exactly how to do it. And they work that agenda. And then the teachers just implement it under things like social emotional learning, restorative justice. You know, they change these names every week so that you have no idea what's coming for you. And so again, like, they want you to fight with your child. They want there to be a division so that, you know, they may start it in kindergarten, but by the time they're in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, who are they going to go to when they're facing a problem? It's not going to be you, you know,
right.
It's going to be them. And, you know, in Nevada, where abortion is legal, I believe it's down to the age of 12 now. You don't need a parent. Like,
it's getting worse all the time. Yeah.
This is a very scary situation to be in with your kids. And so I've been going back to your point, you have to talk to them about this stuff.
Oh, totally. It totally is. And well, you know, schools got away from teaching them how to learn, which is what they should be doing. And they've changed over to teaching them what to believe. And history doesn't record any place where education works. And they so twist everything up. Take social emotional learning. They've hijacked so many of these things. If I'm there teaching a group, room full of kids, and I've got a girl just sitting there sobbing all day or something, for me to just go on and say, get that math done. You've got 23 problems, you need 25. That couldn't be colder. For me to say, okay, let's just stop math today. Let's talk with Susie about what's bothering her and go this. What you do immediately if you saw that would be pull Susie out in the hall for a moment. What's going on? You okay? You sick? Something wrong at home? What? And she'd, you know, usually say, I'm sick, or, oh, it was unhappy last night, or whatever. And immediately you'd say, you know, would you be better off staying in school today, or would you like to call mom and go home and try to figure this out? And then, because sometimes a child will say, well, I can kind of get a little stronger if I just stay at school and keep working. Sometimes, no, they, you know, shouldn't have come in the first place. There you're dealing with, you're teaching them their academic stuff, but you're also acknowledging the social and emotional part of it. But what they describe as social emotional learning is so twisted and so does not work. And so, yeah, like most everything they do. Well, I tell you what, we're getting close to the end. Christina, you're great. You ought to be writing a book yourself about this, I think. And would love to have you join us on another show here. We've got a bunch of stuff to go through. But anyhow, any closing thoughts, Jan?
Well, all we got through was being a strong, assertive parent, but I think it was very inclusive, and I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, Christina.
I really appreciate you having me. I love talking about parenting, so anytime, I'm always available.
Oh no, appreciate your thoughts. You know, my favorite definition of school, it says it's a building with 4 walls with tomorrow inside. And what schools have become, our public schools, is a building with 4 walls with nonstop brainwashing, amoral stuff produced, a godless approach to anything. And we're not saying doctrinal, make him a good. If a kid comes in there and he's a Jew or a Muslim or a Sikh or a Buddhist or whatever, my goal is not to recruit him to join my church. My goal is to encourage him to, again, work with his parents to be the best young man or woman that he can grow up to be, and follow teachings that lead to, I've often used the golden rule as an example. Most every major religion has that in that, et cetera. And just, schools can be done different than they're done. But, well, listen, we're out of time. Really good. Again, Christina, thank you very much. Jan, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on too.
See you both again. This is Paul White for Get Schooled on Education. See you next time.
Christina.
Bye, Jan. Bye. Nice meeting you, Paul.
Same here.